This is an example of a whole class lesson that might be used in a middle school history class. And the purpose of a lesson like this would be just to review the events that led up to the American Revolution. You can see at the bottom of the screen I have text boxes that I created, and essentially the students are going to put these in order in a kind of a flow chart. But the difference in this and just any typical flow chart that they might do is that I'm going to have my students working both collaboratively and as a whole class to create this chart. To start with, I would put my students into small groups and put this up on the screen for them. And I would have those small groups talk about what order they thought they went into. That gives them a chance to learn from one another and really collaborate a little bit as they review this topic. Once they've had a few minutes to do that, I would come down and activate my student pens by clicking on the multiple inputs icon. And in this kind of activity, you really could get away with just activating one student pen and passing it around, but I'm going to go ahead and activate several of my pens for this example. And because my students don't need inking capability for this activity, I'm going to go ahead and minimize my student palette. Okay, so to get started, I would call on my first group of students and ask them to go ahead and choose which event they think is the first one that goes in this chain. And hopefully they would choose the French and Indian War. And then I would engage that group in explaining why they chose that as the first event. And again, that would give us a chance to also have a little bit of whole class discussion. I would grab my teacher pen, come in and get my straight line tool that I have set with an arrow on the end, and then I would call on my next group of students to select the next event that they believe goes in this chain. And hopefully then my students would come down and select that new taxes were passed, and we would have a discussion about how wars are expensive and countries pay for them through raising taxes. And we would just continue in the same pattern, calling on different groups of students to select the event that comes next, and we would have a discussion each time an event is selected. That's a pretty simple little activity to create, simple to use with your class, but it does give them a great chance to kind of clarify their knowledge in that small group and then engage in that whole class discussion. Another great way to use AVer Plus with this same topic in this same kind of setting is using the GRS feature, and we're going to go ahead to our next page to do that. You'll see on this page that I have not really a question, but more of just two statements that I want my students to either agree or disagree with, and or select the one that they most agree with. So to do this kind of activity, what I would do first is have those same small groups discuss these two statements and reach a consensus about which one they most agree with. And they would need to be ready to defend their choice. There is no right or wrong answer, though. Once my students have had a chance to discuss that, I'm going to go down to the bottom of my screen and click on my GRS symbol and go ahead and get ready to start the vote. And I will just click my Start button down here at the bottom. And this question is set with a countdown on it. Students can't vote during that countdown. Once we're ready, and keep in mind my students would have discussed this before I started that vote. So they're going to be ready to vote once we get it started. And you can see as my student pens are voting that I can see the blue box that's showing up around the number for their pens. So the teacher will know when the students have finished their vote. I'm going to click Stop now. And my results are going to come up in the screen, and I'll be able to see how my class voted on this. In my example here, I just did 2 and 2. And then we would have a discussion. I might call on a group and ask them which one they chose, why they chose it, and they're really going to defend their answer. And that is very high-level learning when a group, first of all, has to reach a consensus, because that is true collaboration, and then they have to be able to defend their choice. So two great examples of how you can use your AVer Plus software in whole class lessons and also in small collaborative groups.